constraint layout. Yesterday we discussed about the linear layout, and today we will be discussing the constraint layout. We'll also learn about adding user interactivity to the app, and we'll also have a short quiz at the end. So, what a constraint layout means? A constraint layout is a view group which allows you to position and size widgets in a flexible way. That means whenever you add any widget into your app, it can be a text view, button, or an image, or whatever you add into your app, constraint view to design it, to position it, sizes, everything in a much flexible way. There are many types of constraint like relative positioning, margin, central positioning, etc. that you can see on the screen. We'll be discussing few of them by adding it into our app. So let's get started. So for today, let's create a new Android app. Let's create a new project and empty activity. Let's name it colors, as we'll be experimenting with colors today, and click on finish. By the time this project gets built, let's discuss about what we had done yesterday. Yesterday we had talked about linear layout, and linear layout and constraint layout are different things. In linear layout, we'll be dealing only with horizontal and vertical view, but in constraint layout, we work with more flexible ways. So we can let this app get built by then. I hope my font and my code is visible to you all. Now that the app is ready, let's run and see what we get. In an empty project, we get a hello world text in the middle. You can see it on the emulator. The Gradle build process takes time as it keeps building, as it has to build the project. So now that this is built, I'll share my emulator. Yeah, you can see a hello world text in the center. This hello world text has been created because we took an up from the template, and the template, this is what it mentions. So next, if we go to now let's begin coding into the app. Now, yesterday we have discussed about adding a linear layout. So now that in default app we already get constraint layout, let's design it. As you can see, an auto connect toggle button is usually off, and we should have it off because we are manually coding our layout. Let's set the default margin for our app to be 16. By default it comes to be 0, so let's change it to 16. Yesterday we had discussed about padding and margin, so this margin is set for the whole app as such. We have changed to 16. This menu can be found in the toolbar on the top of the design tab of your app. Now if we click on this text view, we can see that a constraint widget, a view inspector, has been added. This is specific to in the attributes only for constraint, only when the layouts are built using constraint layout. In linear layout, we don't find this particular thing. The view inspector is available. Now let's add margin for our text view. For adding margin, we can directly edit it from here. For left, for top, let's add a 16 density pixel. The same goes with the bottom. For sides as well, can delete this default text view and get a new one. Yeah, so now we got the text view. We can see that there are 3 arrows in this constraint widget in the view group that we see. These 3 arrows are meant for wrap content. Wrap content means the view expand only as much as needed to contain the contents inside it. So this means that this particular box around the text view is only meant for the area that whatever you write there, that only that much part will be covered. If we change it to fixed and set values, that is by tapping onto this we get the choice of having it fixed. Then you can specify the dimensions and it won't change. And if we keep match constraints, this view expands as much as possible to meet the constraints on each side after accounting for the view's own margin. This is very flexible and we shall keep that. It can take up as much space as the content goes ahead. So yeah, we have added 3 margins, and now let us also in the text tab, let's extract a margin resource for the same. Going into this, let's extract it as a resource and create a new dimension. Can name this resource as margin wide. Give it a value of 16 density pixel. That's what we just named, and click on OK. And you click OK. A diamond file is created in the project directory. Inside the resource folder, we under the values we have another in which we just got a margin wide, the variable that we just created. So yeah, let me reset this so that the screen gets. For start and top and left, let's add it as this so that we can reuse the value every time we get into the app. As we are done with the setting up the margin for the app, if we check the code, we can find that in the text view, we find that the 3 margins have been taken up from the dimension file, and it has also got the other constraint matching to the parent. Switching back to the design tab, let's see what next we can do. Let us style the font. Yeah, before we style the font, we have just found out that this text view is hard coded. That means that is why we are getting a warning here. To remove the hard code, we can create an resource as a string and add it to the strings.xml file. Let's create a new string value. Let's give it box_1. For the resource value, let's say call it box1. Click on OK and choose this box1 and click on OK, and you get this text. Now let's style this. For styling, search for font family. Let's first change the font. font family, click on more options, more fonts. You can search, you can choose any font that you want. You can consider anything. Just choose a random font. You can click on OK, and the font gets added in. Next, let's add a box style. So now we don't have a style.xml file here. So let's create that. Left click inside the values folder. Click new value resource file. Just type styles. It creates an XML file for designing. For this app, you can add a style here. So let's create a style with the name white box. Let's call our style white box. Let's add items to it. First, let's add a background. And a background color of maybe green. You can actually add any color. And choose Android. Okay, black, or you can go with green. Anything is fine. Let's go with yellow green. Next, let's add other style like next let's add text alignment. Text alignment. For this, let us call let's have it center aligned. Next, let's have another item. Let's have a text size. And yeah, in the dimension file, we can add a dimension and name it. Let's create a new dimension value. Name it text box text size. This is for the text that shall be inside the box, that we are calling it as box, and we are giving it a value of 24 density pixel. Let's use that here for the text box text size. Let's have the text to be bold. Yesterday we had extracted the style, today we are manually coding it. Can add a text color. All these are optional. You can add it if you want. Have the color white. Then let's have font family. Okay, font that we just added, so we are not adding that again. So that shall not be necessary. Now we need to add the style file for our text view. So before we do that, let's call this, let's give an ID for this text view and call it box1. Let's search for the style attribute. For our style, we can just add the white box style that we just created. When we add this, you can see that all the contents in this box has got added according to the style that we just added. To see the app in landscape mode in the top bar, we can also have the option to use a landscape mode that shall enable us to see in landscape mode. Let's keep it in portrait. Let's also have the UI enabled so that we can actually see how the app looks. Yeah, so this is our app right now. We have added a constraint layer inside. We have created a box, a text view box inside the constraint layout. Now let's add another constraint view. Let's drag in another text view, place it below this. Let's call it box2. Yeah, before we do that, let's add a constraint to this. Clicking on the top of this text view and joining it to the bottom aligns it according to that particular view. And the left hand side for the same, we can align it with the left hand side of the same. This seems to be an error. Yeah, the top has to be set to 16. Yeah. Now we have the second text view added. Yeah, now let's set the ID of this text view to be box2. Let's call it box2. And name this box2. There seems to be an error. I just checked it out now. This error is not good. I can delete this text view and yeah, that error was because I renamed the wrong element, and that's where we got the error. Now that it's been rectified, I'm dragging in the text view again. Now place it anywhere in the screen. Add this to this. Left to this. We have got a margin of 16 density pixel. Now for this element, let's call this box2. The text to show. Let's extract a string resource. Create a new string value. Call it box_2, and inside that we can type box2 for the text. Yeah, we have the text. Let's add the same style for what we just created. You can reuse the style, that's why we have it in XML file instead of having to code it again and again, using the same white box style for this. And next thing, let's add a layout width. It has come to default. Let's add it a width of 130, density pixel, and a height of 130. We can we'll see a square box in it. Yeah, this is what we get on the UI. If we run the app, we can see that there shall be 2 text boxes. Let's run and see what we get. This is the app that we just made running on the virtual emulator. Next, let's add something. Let's create a chain of checks views. A chain is a group of views that are linked to each other with bidirectional constraints. That means just the way we link one object to another, that's what a chain is. We can even in constraint layouts, we can have a chain of elements. So let's drag in 3 text views into our app, one below the other. We now have 3 text views. 3 new text views. To create the first element that we want in the chain is called the head, and second is called the leg. That's how it falls. And now let's create a chain for this. Before we create a chain, let's rename our text views. Let's give an ID of box 3. Yeah. Now that we are given the ID, let's also create a string resource, and let's have text for the same. Yeah, now we see that there seems to be an error. This error is because this view is constrained and it does not have the margin specified. So we'll be doing that. We'll have to create a chain. That's what we are demonstrating. So let's select all the 3 elements. Right click, can find the option to chain, and let's create a vertical chain. Yeah. Now after creating the vertical chain, we need to align them accordingly. So for aligning them, the top of box 3, let's add it to the top of box 2 so that it gets aligned like that, and bottom of box 5 to the bottom of box 2 so that it gets aligned accordingly. For the same thing, let's connect all the left hand side of all the 3 boxes to that of the box 2 so that everything is horizontally aligned. Now before we do that, we can align everything to the right as well. Then bring it to the right hand side so that it gets a margin of 16 intensity pixel for all the 3 boxes. And for aligning to the left hand side, we can align it accordingly. Now we have this boxes at the center, and that too aligned as a chain. This is also one of the properties that you can play around with this box style, the chains. Now that you haven't applied any style for this, so let's apply the style that we have created. It goes with the same method. So for all the 3 boxes, let's add the same style of the white box. Yeah, for now, for each of these, let's add an attribute to the bottom as well so that it gets matched. For the layout for this, for the box 4, let's give margin for expanding this. We get layout top and margin right, choose that, and for layout bottom as well we can give it margin right. You can change these strings, whatever you want to write you can write that as well. And yeah, the same thing goes for the others. For start, we can add right. Now let's also add the layout width. Let's make it to 0 so that it matches with the constraints. Same thing goes for the other boxes as well, so that we get a kind of text box grid. Okay, make it to match constraint. Wrap content is the box takes up the size as much as that of the text inside, but when we make it to match constraint, it takes the space as much as it gives in the constraint. If we run the app, we can see a grid has been made. Yeah, sure, I can zoom in my screen. should be visible now. Now if we run this app, you can see this text view grid box created. You can share more later. Waiting for the app to run. Yeah, this is the app that we just created. That using constraint layout. Next, we shall learn to add click handlers to the text view. So let's get started with that. Let's go to the main activity file. This is where the main app activity exists. So here we'll be adding some functions so that we can play around with these colors. So let's get started. Let's create a new function. Create a new function. All you need to do is to make it private. Use the keyword fun, that is the keyword for creating the function. The name of the function, let's call it make colored. The attributes that the parameters that the function takes is a view. So let's call it a view. Now let's add some content onto this function. In the first session we had discussed about the when keyword, so we shall be using that here as well. When we have view.id, that's how for every view we are fetching it. When we are fetching it through the ID, so that's how we shall go. So let's create it accordingly. Now R is the class that we have. Let's go with r.id. When it have for every text view here we had created an ID. For example, the box 1 has an ID box 1. So this stands the ID, so we'll call it in that way. We have the ID as box 1. Then we'll make it a view to set background color to dark gray. This is the syntax for making the color. We can copy the same and we can change the colors accordingly whenever we want to. For box, yeah, we can change only the elements we want to change. This is for box 2, box 3, for box 4, then for box 5. We can change the color to anything. We can go with blue and Third one can be red. Go with green. Last one can be magenta. You can actually type any color. The set background color function on each view ID will change the view's background color using the color constraint. Let's run the app and see what now happens. We can still find out that nothing would have happened because we haven't called this function anywhere. For that, we'll have to add that as well. Okay, let's add that as well. We'll have to create another function. Let's call it set listener. Let's have some variables for which is fetching for each of the text. Find view by ID is how each view is found by using its ID. We are having a text view widget. R dot. Same thing can go for all the 5 boxes. So let's copy the same text and change it accordingly. Because we are using the same name, we are getting these errors. So let's change that. Now we find that there aren't any errors. So yeah. At the end of this function, we also have to add a click listener function. A click listener function is that if we click on a view to have it responsive, this is what we use. So let's add that variable as well. Let's call it clickable views. And let's have a list of views defining the same. also pass on the root of the constraint layout. It's giving an error because we haven't named our constraint layout. We need to create a variable for that as well. That's why we are getting this error. So let's add that as well. We have named our the whole layout as layout. Let's call this constraint underscore layout so that it's now we have all this. We also have to add another sentence at the end of each function, that is when none of them are clicked. So for that we'll use the else statement. So let's set the color to light gray, or let's set it to black. And go with any color and let's set to you. And now we also have the list of clickable views. Okay, and we don't have errors also, so yeah, at the end of this function we also have to we also want the colors to change, so we'll have to call the function make color at the end of this. So let's add that as well. For any item we'll be using for loop for any item that is in clickable views, the list that we created. Let's pass on that and call the make colored function for it. That is the view. Now let us call this function in our main onCreate function. So under this, let's call this set listeners function. So if we run the app now, on the blank screen you won't find anything, but upon clicking on the if you tap on the app, then we shall see the changes that we just made. When we just tap, we don't find any changes, but if we tap on the screen, the background changes. Upon clicking on each boxes, that's what we just added. The color changes according to the color that we just added. Yeah, so this is all about what we have coded till now. If you people have any doubts till now, you can ask. The comment section in the chat box. We'll also have an interactive session following this. So if you have any doubt, you can ask now in the chat box.